Hello, Kasper.
Hello.
It is very nice to see you here. Thank you for coming.
My honor.
You are a very well recognized professional among tattoo technicians and among permanent makeup technicians and beauticians. And we all know why. Because you study these things which are very closely connected with tattooing and permanent makeup. You study a lot pigments for that, the colorants and all the other things that are connected with this. And you study how the pigments affect the health and which is very extremely important, taking into consideration the increasing interest in the tattooing and permanent makeup. So you are participant and a member of European Society of Tattoo and Pigments. And there are a lot of studies happening already nowadays. It used to be like that, and now it's even more detailed and deep. So it was also your personal interest, and you did a PhD work about this. Can you please tell us, because this question appears now very often, technicians and tattooists start talking about that. We have questions about MRI treatment and the connection of that with the pigment. So tell us please more details about that, and how did you do this, and what is your general conclusion?
All right, so in general, it have been for many years kind of like a myth between the interaction of MRI and tattoos, because it was actually first discussed in Mythbusters on Discovery Channel, where they actually did some test about that a tattoo maybe explode during an MRI. Luckily, there was no tattoo exploding, but it still raised an important clinical question if there is any problem. And now I've been kind of about like 10 years in tattoo research in Denmark, and I known for years that it is very common that both in traditional tattooing, but also predominantly in permanent makeup, there is a contamination of iron and all the contaminant metals like nickel, like chromium, manganese, copper, aluminum, and manganese. And some of them come from bulk production because tattoo ink are produced in big stainless steel tanks, but some of them are also a part of the pigment itself. You can kind of see like overall, the tattoo ink is composed of two components. It is a soluble solution, which is kind of like a watery solution or alcohol, mixed with the insoluble pigment particles, which creates the color that is inlaid into our dermal layer. Nowadays, about maybe 80% of the tattoo ink is of organic components. So it is synthetically made from like molecular pigments. But the iron oxide pigments are still predominantly used in especially permanent makeup, because as you may know, it is it's not that vibrant as organic pigments. It's more transparent and more matching the facial complexions, and is kind of like better camouflage into the face.
With this point, I agree with you absolutely, because we also had some certain fashion in using certain pigments. We have begun only with mineral pigments 25 years ago. There was no very close connection in tattoo production and permanent makeup production. It was very separate. And it was even impossible for a permanent makeup person who did this. It was impossible to find any information from tattoo. It was very high hidden secret information. So basically we were using minerals, and we had only two organic colors, which had completely different specialities, and they were very transparent also. So we do love mineral pigments because of this visual effect that it gives for the face.
Yeah.
And that's why we are worried if they will be forbidden. Yes.
I don't think so, because actually one of the main findings in my PhD is there's occasionally problems with tattooed individuals in an MRI, but early on it was like made as the highest suspect being the mineral pigments, because they had iron oxide minerals in it that can in some cases be magnetic. Mm-hmm. But one of my findings show that it's not all iron oxide minerals that can be the problem, mm-hmm. but in general only one specific type of iron oxide that I, in those situations, suggest maybe to be switched to maybe a carbon black substitute. Mm-hmm. And it is because we have, in general, used in permanent makeup 3 minerals, iron oxide minerals. It is the goethite, which is yellow-brown, the hematite, which is brownish-red, and then we have the magnetite, which is naturally very magnetic, and it is coloring black or jet black. Mm-hmm. So what I'm seeing from my studies is that is a higher proportion of patients having permanent eyeliner or darker eyebrows that in some rare cases interfere with the MRI examination, creating either artifacts of the picture when doing the scanning, or in rare cases having skin reaction that can be painful or creating erythema and edema around the tattoo. But actually, a very important finding of my PhD is that it's not only the iron oxide that creates a problem, but I also see numerous cases in non-metallic tattoos. Mm-hmm. I specifically in my PhD done studies on some patients having tattoo problems in an MRI, and none of them had any metal in the tattoo. So now it raises a new question. Maybe it's not the metal, but something else. And my suggestion is that it's actually more the tattoo particles that can lead electricity that is created during the MRI imaging. Mm-hmm. It's called conductivity.
Okay, so you want to say that the company who products pigments and label it saying MRI safe, do they say the truth?
I will say from their perspective, they have no kind of knowledge to claim that they can be MRI safe. Mm-hmm. I think if they use any metals, and I think if we do analysis on their pigments, we will find metal in them, because we do that in more or less all pigments. Mm-hmm. With, of course, the new REACH regulations, they have been set limits now for how much of each metal that is allowed in the pigment. Mm-hmm. But if the industry will adhere to these regulations, time will show. Mm-hmm. But maybe it will be a smaller problem with the metals on the long run. But as I just said, in some cases, it's not even the metal that creates the problem, maybe. Mm-hmm.
So the producers must look for the more pure powder, raw material, or what it can provoke this kind of style. Because we have on the market certain pigments, and they do not make the new powders every day. It's not like that. So, or we will find finally that this we will never use again, or these are appropriate for using. Is this like that?
I don't think it's a problem to use iron oxide pigments, because it is some of the most ancient colorants we have. Iron oxide pigments have been used for ancient makeup in Egypt. It have been used for cave paintings in France. We know it for ages, and it's in general very well tolerated. We don't see patients having any predominant skin problems with these contaminant metals. Mm-hmm. The only thing you should maybe as a technician be aware of is that the pigment itself is less stable over time than the organic pigment. As you know, it may have, in some cases, if it's not a good pigment, have so-called dyschromial changes. So the the iron oxide can change structure over time, as it's kind of like a rust process actually oxidizes. So the iron oxide that is red, the hematite, will over time fade and become more reddish brown than brownish red.
Yes, this we know by practice.
You know it.
Yes.
So that's just a thing you maybe should be aware of when using it. And as a technician, when you know your manufacturers and you know the product, then you're probably all good. But it's when using it, something you should be aware of for sure. If you want to have happy customers, you should be aware of what type of pigments you use and also how you mix it. And that's a very important point, because if you mix organic pigment together with inorganic, maybe the inorganic pigment will fade faster than the organic, and then you have some funny results in the long run.
Well, this is problem which can be solved. It's not so very complicated.
No, I'm not the expert in permanent makeup. I'm just the nerd.
So if we summarize, is it dangerous to do the MRI while having a permanent makeup or tattoo?
I will say in general, individuals with tattoos needing an MRI should not be afraid. It's not contraindicated to get an MRI if you have a tattoo. My studies show that if a reactions occur that can be painful, it's not something that affects the tattoo or destroy the tattoo or change color of the tattoo. It can be painful, but it will go away as soon as the scanning stops. And so far, we haven't seen any permanent damage to the skin either afterwards. So I think the reaction we have seen is just both the physicians and also the patients become scared because the sensation they feel is a burning pain. But it doesn't mean that it is a real skin burn, but it's more sensation that can be recalled by many things. That is not even like a temperature increase, but in some cases just the nerves that are activated to feel a burn. Okay?
I see.
So in general, no, if you need an MRI, either if you, for instance, have cancer, the MRI is more important than your tattoo. Okay?